Radio Retro Future.
Okay, so welcome ladies and gentlemen to my first live stream that I do alone on Radio Retro Future. Still getting things a little bit ready. Yes, so what is this solo stream about tonight? Well, basically, I went to Dutch Comic Con this weekend together with the Ragtags. It was a really nice weekend. We're there with the army of toy soldiers who asked us to support them at their booth. They wanted some nice objects to grab the audience's attention. And yeah, we succeeded in doing that. So hooray for us, I suppose. That being said, I met a number of people, very interesting, seen some very interesting projects that I, as a vlogger, am very interested in participating. I hope to do more on that pretty soon. I hope to have some new interviews based on those meetings with those people. And yeah, of course it also led to a lot of, photographers being there, being drawn to the cosplay event that is Dutch Comic Con. Conventions like Dutch Comic Con are still relatively new in the Netherlands. They were always there, but most of them were really small, very specific. Often they were only oriented at anime fans or manga fans, science fiction fans. We had Star Trek conventions, those kind of things. We did have those, but they were really a niche thing. A lot of people and photographers are still new to the concept of cosplay, and now they found it, they want to experiment with that. And one of these photographers is Jape Edits. It's not his real name, but I'll use it for the sake of this monologue. I'm not having a conversation this time. I get used to that, and now I have to talk straight into the camera, which I usually also don't do. So yeah, he basically wrote a number of questionnaires, or a single questionnaire, excuse me. And yeah, these questionnaires are actually quite common. I've seen them before, also asked by either internet journalists who want to know what cosplay is, or they want to know where people get their ideas from, stuff like that. Seeing this questionnaire, it occurred to me, this is not made for people like me, not for people who are steampunks, or in my case a retro punk, I suppose, or punk fluid. Whatever. When I'm reading these questions, I'm like, yeah, these are not for me, but I wanted to talk about the differences between steampunks and cosplayers, because there are significant differences. Yeah, you know what, I'm just gonna go over the questions one by one, and yeah, we'll see what comes up in my brain. I will give my perspective on these questions as a steampunk, so I kind of miss the cosplay perspective on those very subjects, but it's what it is. So, the first question is, what's the name of your character? Realize I'm translating from Dutch. Don't know if that's relevant, but there you go. So, what's the name of your character? Now, I have several characters that I play, but on Dutch Comic Con I was there as Dankert Lexicon, basically as eye candy. How long are you into cosplay? Well, and that's the first question that I say, yeah, this is not meant for me. Like I said, I don't believe I'm a cosplayer. I know there is a difference in the meaning, or how people have come to perceive it, between cosplay in Europe and cosplay in the United States. I think that steampunks are considered cosplayers for the sake of the word, because they wear costumes. And yeah, there is an interpretation of that word here in the Netherlands as well. I don't know what it's like in countries like France or Belgium. We have a very niche convention culture. They were really like science fiction conventions with panels by writers, but people wanted to talk about specific subject, like you had on Dutch Comic Con some guy talking about Jedis, for example. So those were what those conventions were like, and I'm sure there were some booths and stuff like that, but these really, I heard about them from stories. Basically, that's how, and I go to a lot of these things, so I think that's telling something. But yeah, what we did have were fairs. We had Castlefest is very renowned internationally. We have Elfia, which was probably one of the events that made it grow as large as it did. But the thing with Castlefest and Elfia is that they have everything. They have science fiction, LARP, reenactment, fantasy, it all mingles. And that's where I know the people from. And cosplayers, and now I guess we have to come from what I believe a cosplayer is in the Netherlands. Here in the Netherlands right now, it's mostly people who are fans of certain, well, not genres, I should say franchises. Like when you go to Dutch Comic Con, you'll see a lot of anime characters. Dragon Ball Z, we saw a lot. Legend of Korra, I know it's not really anime, but you get my drift. All those things were crammed together on that con, but you didn't see much random fantasy on Dutch Comic Con. We were unique in the fact that we were not part of any franchise. While when you go to something like Elfia, which is one of the largest, many of these things are unique creations. People put their own spins on fantasy tropes. A lot of ladies into very elaborate queen or princess dresses, I still call them for the sake of argument. But with very unique takes on it. And these are not their original creations, just things that popped up in their heads. They are working on that the entire year and just to wear it to Elfia. And you don't see that as much on cons. There you see a lot of known characters. It's why people are going to cons, especially photographers. There are certain photographers that only want to photograph known characters. They're not interested in original creations. We're photographed a lot on Dutch Comic Con. But there were photographers that we encountered several times, and they just ignored us. We were not interested. So I guess they were just there for the known characters. And I can understand that people like to recognize things. That's just human nature, and I believe that's one of the reasons that they go there. But to get back to the question, how long am I in cosplay? I never started with cosplay. I started as a reenactor. That's the first thing I did. I always was interested in things like LARP, because that was the only thing I knew. And one of the things that attracted me to LARP at that point was the fact it also had an activity, playing a real character that you create yourself, write yourself, stuff like that. But I never got into LARP. Instead, I was introduced to somebody who was starting his own reenactment group, Medieval Reenactment. And I stayed with that group for 14 years. I literally grew through the ranks, so to speak. That really affected how I wanted to do steampunk. After 14 years, I changed. I wanted to develop myself in new ways, and I just lost interest in the group, in the activities that were associated with it. Unfortunately, because I had really good connections with those people at the time, but yeah, we didn't share the same interests anymore. Well, that's not entirely true, but you know how things like that goes. So yeah, I started with steampunk, and I went to a few events, and I realized this was not how I was going to do my hobby. I explained this story several times, so I will not get into it. But for steampunks in the Netherlands, they don't associate with cosplay. There are good reasons for that. The materials they use are, for one, very different. God, like the culture itself is extremely different. When you go to Elfia, there is a lot of medieval stuff. There's a lot of activities, plays, people giving small performances, crafts, yeah, and also a lot of spiritual things, I suppose. A lot of neo-paganism goes into those events, like Castlefest has a lot of it. Storytellers is one of them, historical stories, which is also probably one of the third major difference between cosplayers and steampunks, is their interest in history. Steampunks are incredibly interested in history. That's what they want to punk. Go to a con like Dutch Comic Con. It's a lot of anime-related stuff, anime-related costuming, science fiction-related, and even then, often more the better-known franchise. A lot of Star Wars, a lot of Star Trek, Firefly, maybe. I haven't seen that much of Firefly. to be quite honest, which is one of my favorite science fiction franchises, I suppose. But also has that callback once again to history, so that's probably one of the reasons I like it so much. Also, I noticed that this is more of a subjective argument, is their characters are very different. Like for one, they're into anime, they're into major franchises. That's what they come for. That's the characters they want to depict. Steampunks are, well, they're fans of a lot of franchises. I mean, some of the steampunks are involved in major Star Wars related projects. Steampunk Boba Fett I had on the show. There's also another guy who's related to the steampunk community somewhat, who's building a life-size Millennium Falcon. They do have a certain relationship with major franchises. You'll often have to hear them have conversations about Star Trek and Star Wars. Anime is also a major influence for steampunks as well, but it's much more subdued. Maybe some steampunks will have brightly colored hair for wigs, but beyond that, it's really subdued. That's one of the things that steampunks do. They take elements from various fandoms that they enjoy and mangle them together in a big hodgepodge, and then add history to that. They can tell you where they got many of their ideas from. Like Warhammer is a major inspiration for a lot of them. A lot of steampunks are actually very much into Warhammer 40k, especially, and do Warhammer 40k cosplays. And also Warhammer has that really strong historical presence in its subject matter. Steampunks really like franchises with historical aspects to them. And of course they like to punk characters they like into and turn them into new Victorian-esque or other historical period versions of those characters. They want to make everything the way they want it to, while cosplayers often seem to make characters the way they are supposed to be. So no, I was never involved into cosplay. So it brings me kind of with the third question, what is your first cosplay creation? Well, I never dressed as a known character. My first steampunk costume was I bought a coat at a militaria convention, Chine, huge militaria convention with just miles and miles of old military gear and vintage, other vintage material. And I bought an original 1890 gendarmerie coat, a Belgian gendarmerie coat. I still have it actually somewhere. I wore a M43 mountaineering cap. It's the kind of cap that the Central European armies wore in the 1930s, 1940s. Germans, you see a lot of Germans wearing them as well in World War II movies. And I had a big Nerf gun that I painted. For the rest, I dressed like myself, but I have a very strange way of dressing, so yeah. It was kind of a sniper, I suppose. That was. So, which characters do you use and why? Is there a story behind it? Well, I suppose what he means here in this question, what known characters do you play? Well, I don't. I have Dankert Lexicon is my most fully developed character, and for Ragtag it's the Corporal. And these characters play a larger role in the narrative that I want to tell. That's my motivation. I want to tell stories. I think that goes for a lot of steampunks, where cosplayers want to express their fandom for an anime or known franchise. Steampunks want to tell their story about a world they themselves created for their character, about the character that they themselves created. You'll find a lot of writers in the steampunk community, no shortage of those. So the story behind Dankert Lexicon would be that I was blogging at the time for Tupperware Steampunk, and I started doing my first interviews there, written form, not the videos that I make today. And I wanted to give a twist to the interviews. I didn't want it to be, oh, I'm a journalist asking somebody questions. No, I wanted there to be a story. So I created Dankert Lexicon to be the guy asking the questions. And I asked the people who I interviewed, where would you like to be interviewed? If there was no limitation to the location, where? And Ruud de Korte, who's, I think, my first interview, wanted to be interviewed in the Big Ben. So I made my character go to London and Enter the Big Ben, and I wrote that up, and then I described the situation we were in and how we started the interview. Yeah, and I kept developing Dankert based on those stories, basically. And yeah, I also got a lot of the gear that I wear. Like, people love the Pip-Boy-esque contraption I have on my arm. And everybody is, that's a steampunk version of the Pip-Boy. Well, in a way it is, but I wanted my Pip-Boy to be able to fold up, so I could actually use the camera on it. Because one of the things I was encountering when I was walking around on steampunk events and making pictures for my blog, I kept pulling out my mobile phone to make pictures. I didn't like that. That broke my immersion. And that's another word I wanted to talk about, that steampunks are really looking for immersion. It's the reason why they make all of their creations out of metals. It's the reason why they use real leather. It's the reason why they use wool and tweak and all those other materials instead of a lot of the synthetic materials that cosplayers wear. I should say what we associate with cosplay. I'm sure there are some steampunks that use similar materials. There actually are cosplayers that have these steampunk creations where they make with crafting foam and similar materials. And the same goes for the corporal. With Ragtag, who's a military outfit, they needed an officer. We wanted to be a kind of an A-team, that an interdimensional A-team, but we didn't want high officers because then everybody would be a lieutenant and a colonel and we would have no soldiers. So we decided all grenadiers would be soldiers and just one character, mine, would be the corporal. And that's his name, the corporal. He serves no other functions other than being a corporal. But that's Ragtag for you. So, yeah, do you make everything yourself? As much as I can, but I have a lot of help. Like I said, I'm trying to tell a story, and people like that about what I do. So a lot of people are willing to make stuff for me for little to no expense, and I really should make a thank you video for that at one point. Because people are like, yeah, this is a story we can immerse ourselves in, that we can take part of if we wish to do so. Yeah, so they want to see that grow, I suppose. So people make stuff for me. Niels is one of those people. He made the original Ollie Boy. I made the color for Dankert Lexicon myself. I made all my masks myself, and I made some masks for other people. All the stuff you see behind you, apart from the furniture, like the Chesterfield chair, yeah, I made myself. The red blocks over there are done by myself. So I learned a lot. I didn't know how to do all this stuff when I started. Well, a little bit. But most of it I learned by doing steampunk, I suppose. There you go. Do you participate in contests? I often don't have the time. I did once, but yeah, I don't really like them to begin with. For one, they're all known characters when it comes to cosplay conventions. Yeah, I believe there's a lot of nepotism going on, but that may be my own subjective interpretation. So yeah, I'm not really a fan of those. Did you ever won? It's... no. I participated once because I had nothing better to do. That's the thing with things like contests for me. They are a very good way to promote yourself. That is a benefit. But yeah, and I've been invited to do fashion shows and stuff like that, and I get a lot of compliments for my costume because it has a very unique style. Ragtag is very unique in what it does. So we often get a lot of compliments for that. On several cons I was asked if I could participate in the kind of a display of the best costumes, I suppose. But I couldn't make them because they were too late in the day. Yeah. Do you go to Comic-Cons? Well, not a lot. Just the large ones. And in this case, we went both days because we were invited by the toy soldiers. I go to fairs. And I like the smaller fairs. There are not that many of them anymore, unfortunately, or they're really far away from me. But I like those. And one of the things about it is that you meet the people that have the similar interests, and you don't see them all that much. It's one of the few places where you can meet people you otherwise would never see, or have only known from Facebook, or stuff like that. I also try to promote my YouTube channel on those events, but until now I never got any subscribers from that. But there are good ways to learn new people. In my case, learn about projects people are working on, and get into contact with people you otherwise would only be able to speak on social media. And I had some very long-lasting friendships that way, but also through this channel I have very long-lasting friendships. What is the most beautiful thing you experienced the past period? I guess making or movie for Tales in the Broken Reality. Blood in the Circus, which you can watch on the Tales of a Broken Reality YouTube channel run by Brian Oliver. It's an international project made by steampunks. I'll read your message soon, Andy, don't worry. What was it? Yes, Tales of Broken Reality on YouTube. Tales of Broken Reality is an international project now by Brian Oliver. It's mainly international because we, the Dutch Ragtag, has participated in it together with some other people I know from the steampunk community and some people from outside the steampunk community. And yeah, it's lots of fun. Very nice to see what people are doing, how people make movies on low budgets. So I really encourage you to go see it, because there is really some nice talent involved in that project. Link will be down below, I suppose. Andy messages me, the last costume contest I took part in, my underwater backpack was beaten by a 6-year-old with a globe on her head. The fact that she was the granddaughter of a local politician had no influence on the results. Yeah, I feel your pain, Andy, because I experienced that very same thing once. You know, it's... in this case, I would say that they consider the contest to be something nice for the kids. And yeah, it's special for kids, you know, you're an adult, you should be able to take it, but... I'm not sure how to feel about it. It does not make it fun for me. Let's put it that way. You know, and also the fact that I'm not sure I can even participate in cosplay contests, because I'm an original. I do original characters. I'm not even sure if I can participate with original characters on those. To be quite honest with you. What is the least beautiful about it? Yeah, that would be the drama going around in the community. This is both for steampunk and both for cosplay the same. Same old. How does your environment, my social environment, surround to cosplay? It exists. To them, I suppose. Some don't know what it is, others do. Colleagues of mine asked me if I could take pictures of some characters they liked. They asked me to make photographs of the latest Power Ranger characters, because the movie is coming out pretty soon, or maybe it has already been released, I do not know. And yeah, you know, they appreciate it for what it is. They're interested in me because, my unique way of dressing, and they ask me, where do I get my inspiration from, I suppose. That's how they react. Curiosity, I suppose. But I know from other people, especially those that are living close to religious communities, yeah, they have a lot more issues. Some are hiding that they are wearing costumes at certain weekends. So it really depends on your environment. How much time do you spend on a cosplay? I never stop, I suppose, because all my characters are works in progress. So I'm either writing stories for them to do in videos, or I am trying to figure out what kind of object I would need that could add something to that story. For me, it's an ongoing process. That's for most steampunks. You know, they mix a lot of components from older costumes with newer costumes, stuff like that. It's part of the steampunk identity. They want to have a very close connection with the objects they wear. Whereas cosplayers, this is why I would like to have a cosplayer in this conversation. In my mind, it's more like, yeah, I am gonna wear this character's costume for a while to one or two cons, and I make a new one, and who knows, do they throw their old costumes away? I do not know. All I know is that cheap fabrics, they use crafting foam, which can be very vulnerable material. It's one of the things that just does not appeal to me. Are there things that annoy you in the cosplay world? Most of it is the social drama. Of course, there are also things you do besides cosplay. What do you do in your daily life? Ah, yes. The least interesting questions. I vlog. I suppose, yeah, and I work for local government right now. What can beginning cosplayers learn from me? Well, for those beginning cosplayers, I would suggest subscribe to my YouTube channel. See to all the conversations that are being held there, and they won't just learn stuff from me, they will learn stuff from over, I think I had about 60 other people on my channel by now. Do that, I suppose. Radio Retro Future on YouTube, you should find it, and you can pick out of up from today 52 interviews. Then I've got a number of discussions, and yeah, I learned a lot from these people, especially from the discussions, which we call the Anachronistic Society. My important message for them is, make it your way.